Hey everybody, this is Stacey Kildall, and I hope you guys have been enjoying day one of VCon. I'm pretty sure I'm the last session today, but there might be one after me. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But anyway, I'm going to be talking about converting to QuickBooks Online from anything. Just FYI, we're going to be looking at a lot of slides for the next hour. I'm not going to be switching into product because of the environment. It makes it a little bit easier just to do slides. You're going to get a CPE, one CPE credit for this session today. You have to stay in the entire session. So, I can't prove that you're there, but you should be here for the whole session. Again, I'm going to give you a CPE keyword at some point during the first half of the session and the last half. Please make a note of them because you're going to need them later. At the end of the session to quiz, you're going to get a quiz. It's going to come up, and you will have to choose the keywords in a multiple choice question that's going to show up on your screen. The CPE certificates will be emailed directly to you I'd say give it about 3 weeks is usually the rule of thumb. And it's going to be sent to the same email address that you used to register for this event. So please make sure that you have access to that. If for some reason you don't see it in your inbox in 3 weeks, check your spam or your junk folder. And then because you are all very responsible adults, it is up to you to keep a copy for your record so that when it is time to submit to your reporting agency, your CPE credit, you can get that. And Kathy is saying, hi, Stacey, so I'm saying hi back. I see her in the questions. I'm not going to be answering most of the questions that you guys type in towards the end. If we have time, I'll try to answer some of them verbally, or if I see some pop up that are kind of interesting, I may answer those as they come through. But I have wonderful handlers that are going to be answering questions in the background, one of which, I think two, are two of my favorite people on the planet, Liz and Carol from what I call the Woodard Conglomerate. So anyway, they'll be helping us out today answering questions. This is who I am. My name is Stacey Kildall. You guys can see all that work stuff on the screen. A little bit about me personally. I live in Michigan, and I have two wonderful, amazing kids, and a really super awesome husband, and I have 4 disgustingly annoying cats. So that is me. Oh, and somebody's telling me that CPE is immediate. Okay, thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. Our learning objectives today, we're going to show you guys we're going to talk about the best method to convert data to QuickBooks Online, and then explore some of those options that we have to import data into QBO. Henceforth, I'm going to be referring to QuickBooks Online as QBO, and I'll be talking about how to identify how some key data is going to migrate from QuickBooks Desktop into QuickBooks Online, and then we're not going to actually experience the conversion because I'm not going to be doing screen share. I will try to do that, but we'll see what happens. So when we first talk about converting, what we want to do is deal with just some assumptions when making this conversion. And one of the first assumptions is indeed that you've already determined what version of QuickBooks Online to use. If you have ever heard of it, if you go to radiofreeqb.com, and you guys can email me, just find me on the interwebs, and I can send you a link to this spreadsheet that we have that we've done on the QB show that it compares all of the different products. So our assumptions here is that you've already determined what version of QuickBooks Online subscription you want, Simple Start, Essentials, or Plus, and that you've already been invited and accepted accountant user to an existing QBO subscription to which you're converting. So either you've already created an account, you've already set up a new account in QBO-A for your client, or you've already been invited and accepted the accountant user access to a brand new subscription. So when we talk about actually converting from QuickBooks Desktop, there's a few things that we need to keep in mind. One is that there is no progress invoicing as of the day that I'm talking about this, but I do have a workaround for that. There is no, you are not able to receive partial purchase orders. Again, there is a workaround for this, and like with any workaround, there are workarounds. And so they're not ideal. Any workaround is not going to work for every client and every business. So you really have to evaluate whether or not any kind of workaround in QuickBooks, whether it's desktop or QBO, is going to work for you and your clients. There is payroll, QuickBooks Online payroll. However, there is no integrated labor costing. So while you can assign time and expenses to customers and sub-customers, which would kind of be jobs in QuickBooks, you cannot assign payroll costs to those customers through QuickBooks Online Payroll. You have to do a journal entry to assign those costs after you do payroll. And then there's also no online bill pay. So I know that some financial institutions in QuickBooks Desktop allow you to create the transaction in QBDT, QuickBooks Desktop, and then push it out to the bank. Unfortunately, QuickBooks Online does not do that. There are a couple options right now that do. One of those is Intuit Online Payroll allows you to pay 1099 contractors, and Bill.com allows you to pay contractors and other vendors, as well as Bill and Pay. So there are a few options. I'm a little partial. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little partial to Bill.com. It's the one that I have the most experience with, and it's also one of the key partners. So if you are a QuickBooks Pro Advisor and you go into log into your Pro Advisor account, you have the ability to, we have special discounts and pricing, special offers from the few different app developers. There are no sales orders in QuickBooks Online. So a sales order kind of holds inventory and kind of sets it aside so that if you have 100 on hand and you create a sales order for 50 and then you try and sell another 100, it's going to tell you you have 50 on sales order. So it's kind of holding it there. So QuickBooks Online doesn't do that. However, there are third-party inventory solutions that will allow you to do sales orders. SOS Inventory, SalesPad, Exact Online. I think Activate has an online solution. Do Inventory. There's quite a few different inventory options. There's no inventory assemblies at this time. So SOS is a good option. SalesPad Online, SalesPad Cloud is another really good option. There are no IIF imports. However, if you do have an IIF file, maybe you have a third-party software that is exported to an IIF because they haven't updated how they export their transactions from that software, you can open it up in Excel and actually use a third-party application. I like Transaction Pro Importer to import transactions into QBO. QuickBooks Online also doesn't have price levels. So if you have special pricing, maybe you have wholesale pricing or some sort of discounted pricing that you give to a special customer. Right now there's no inherent price level situations, but what you can do is maybe use a sub item to do that, and they're called products and services in QBO. And then if you have clients who are using those letters, I used to have clients when I had a lot of clients on desktop who would use the collection letters in QuickBooks Online, and so they don't have those in QBO. And so if you have clients that are using that, you're going to have to come up with another solution there. And then we have someone is asking, is it also true if you use T-Sheets for time tracking and push that into QBO? You can certainly use T-Sheets for time tracking, and then you can use that time tracking to create your payroll in QuickBooks Online. However, it still will not assign the cost in QuickBooks Online to the jobs. You can do it from T-Sheets and assign it to customer, but because of the way that QuickBooks Online payroll works on the back end, there's no way to assign those payroll costs to any customers. So you still have to do a journal entry. So you can get the reports out of T-Sheets if you need to, and then you can just make that journal entry and assign those payroll costs. So when, again, converting from QuickBooks Desktop, just some expectations, just so that you understand. Memorized transactions for many years, this was not so. but now memorized transactions will for sure convert to recurring transactions. So any memorized transactions that you have in desktop will now convert to recurring transactions, which is gorgeous and beautiful and wonderful. I have an alarm company that has been holding off on moving to QBO because they had thousands of recurring invoices and sales receipts for all of their alarm monitoring customers. And so it just wasn't an option for them to move, and now they finally can. Also, multi-currency is now available in the U.S. version, the U.S.-based QBO. So before, if you had multi-currency turned on in QuickBooks Online or in QuickBooks Desktop, you couldn't convert that file at all. But now, I think about a year or so ago, that changed, and so it is absolutely possible to convert a multi-currency file into QuickBooks Online. And it will ask you if you want to use that multi-currency and what your home currency is going to be. Just like with desktop, though, once you turn it on, you cannot turn it off. Inventory does convert, however, with one kind of caveat there, one little asterisk, and that is that QuickBooks Online uses FIFO inventory. So if you are planning to move a client that has been tracking inventory in QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, keep in mind with Pro and Premier, the only option is average cost. It calculates inventory costs using the average cost method. So if you are not the tax preparer and you are moving them to QuickBooks Online, you need to have a conversation with the tax preparer and determine what the start date for the FIFO is going to be, because they need to change their reporting method on the tax side. And then payroll. Everything. So I want to tell you guys, listen to the QBO show from the 16th of June, because my partner Woody Adams does a really good job explaining payroll it should be for about 80 to 90% of people a full conversion. It will bring over the historical information, but if you're using items in a way that they were not intended to, like maybe you're doing something, a workaround with payroll items, your payroll may not come over. So it is, at this point, it is a true conversion, but they're going to come over as checks. So just keep that in mind. I usually, if they have payroll, I usually try and do the conversion at the beginning of the year, so I don't even have to worry about it. So we try and do the conversion, right at the beginning of the year, so I don't have to worry about historical transactions. So when you actually do the conversion from QuickBooks Desktop, there's a few things that you need to do. And the first thing is that you need to click on the F2 button and check your targets. So you want to look at the number of targets when you hit F2. That's where it gives all the file information. And if it's under 350,000, you can convert that file. If it is close to, right around 350,000 or higher than 350,000, you're going to want to do a condense, right? So you condense all the old data, get it down underneath 350,000 targets, and those targets are database links. That's what they mean by targets. And we also want to go ahead and do a verify. You verify your data and rebuild your data. One other tip would be you can bypass the verify and rebuild. I never do. I always verify, and then I always rebuild regardless of whether or not I'm asked. And then the last step, just to make sure that I have removed any data corruption that I could possibly remove, I create a portable file, and then I restore that portable file, and then I convert that portable file. So that's really what you need to know about converting from desktop so far. And we have our first CPE keyword, which is actually 2, and the first CPE keyword is Dr. Strange. And Dr. Strange. So I'm looking at some questions here. So we answered that, right? I still use Intuit Quicken 2014 with my own business data and client data. I already have access to QBP. I'm not sure what QBP is. I'm studying for certification of ProAdvisor before I use it. Could data in Quicken, oh, here's the question here. So the way that you're going to convert Quicken to QBO is you're going to convert it first to QuickBooks Desktop. So you can convert Quicken to QuickBooks Desktop, and then you're going to convert that desktop file to QBO. You can't go directly from Quicken to QBO. So you guys have had plenty of time to take a look at that keyword. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move ahead. I'm just reading those questions, that's why I'm pausing. So when we're converting from Mac, the Mac version, that's a little bit different. So if you have an older version of Mac, so if you have QuickBooks for Mac 2012 or earlier, what you need to do is download and install a newer version, QuickBooks for Mac 2014, trial version, and then upgrade your file and follow there's certain instructions on this website. So the way that you do it is you're going to go to your file and then you're going to export to QBOE. A lot of times I have had people who don't necessarily have QuickBooks for Mac. Maybe they don't have a Mac. If you have a client that's coming from Mac, you can either find one of us, who I run my whole practice on a Mac, or the other option would be to have them save their Mac file as a desktop file, and then you can convert it that way. So that might be the best option for those of you who don't have a Mac. You want to make sure that you are going to check for any QuickBooks updates. So, download the trial, the QuickBooks Mac for 2014 trial, and then you're going to open up that QuickBooks. You're going to check for any QuickBooks updates from the QuickBooks menu. And then install, and you want to update so that you have the latest conversion tool. You'll close, and then you'll reopen QuickBooks Mac to install that update. And then to do the actual conversion, it's really simple. You're going to hit the File menu, then you're going to choose Export to QuickBooks Online, and then just follow the online instructions, or on-screen instructions. It's pretty simple. When we're converting from QuickBooks Desktop, Pro, and Premier, the menu options are just slightly different here. You want to make sure that you have 2010 or later, so 2010 Pro or Premier or newer, earlier, right? You're going to do Help. You want to make sure that you've updated the latest release, right? So you want to make sure if you don't have those automatic releases and you don't have QuickBooks automatically installing those, it'll say your version R1, R2. Make sure that you have the latest release. And again, you're going to go to your Help menu here and then Update QuickBooks, install all the updates. You'll close and reopen QuickBooks Pro or Premier to install those updates, just like we did with the Mac. Only this time, to make the conversion, you're going to go to your Company menu, and then you're going to go Export Company File to QuickBooks Online. And again, you'll just follow the on-screen instructions. And here's the deal. I always make sure that the QuickBooks Online account is set up first. And the reason why I do this is because if you don't, and you create the account from the conversion screen, you will end up with QuickBooks Plus. And your client may not necessarily want QuickBooks Plus, QuickBooks Online Plus, and you cannot bring that conversion back down, right? So you can't go from QuickBooks Online Plus to Essentials. So you always want to make sure that you have the QBO subscription set up first, and then you do your conversion, so you can choose that from the list. If you have a version that's older than QuickBooks 2010, or your client does, and you don't intend on supporting QuickBooks Desktop, but you do need to do the conversion, you can download the trial, and there's a link in the slides when you download the slides for today, or you can just go to the Googler. It's an amazing tool, and look for the trial. And again, download that trial to do that conversion. And let's see, I'm flipping through my slides here. Now, when we're converting from QuickBooks Desktop from Enterprise, and yet again, it's a different menu option. we have different menus for every version of QuickBooks. The first thing that we want to do here is hit F2, right? And you want to make sure, again, that you have your targets are under 350,000, only we're not going to leave that screen, that product info screen. And that when you hit F2 in Pro, Premier, Enterprise, what this is doing is showing you how many list items you have, how many transactions are in the file. It gives you all sorts of really cool information about what the file, the stats of the file, basically. And so you're going to click on that F2, and then with that product info screen still open, you're going to hit Control plus B as in boy and Q as in QuickBooks. Right? So I always hit both of them at the same time. I know some people who hit Control, B, and then Q. And then, again, you'll just follow the instructions. It's going to have you log into your QBO account. It's going to have you choose the account you want to convert it to. And the rest is all the same. So it's just the menu options and getting how you get to the screen where you log into QBO from Mac, Pro, Premier, or Enterprise that's a little different. And let's see if we have any questions about that so far. Converted. Okay. And there's a couple people. This is a really good question. Kelly is asking this. Thank you. To be clear, do you always do the verify, rebuild, portable, even if the targets are under 350,000? Yes. So the 350,000 targets, all that's doing is telling you whether or not you can convert that file. You want to do verify, rebuild, portable, just to make sure there's no data corruption in the file. The 350,000, if it's over 350,000, you can't even convert it. So it has to be under that before you can get to verify, rebuild, and all that other stuff. So you want to make sure that the targets are lower than that. Somebody's saying, how do you convert Peachtree Desktop to QBO? Honestly, if it were me and a client came to me today and said, hey, I have Peachtree and I want to go to QBO, I would, and we'll talk about it, I would enter starting balances. And we'll talk about converting lists only. That's really what I would do. I would take their trial balance, as of 12/31. I would probably have them wait till the end of the year. I mean, it's almost July, so it's kind of a double. I mean, it's kind of a tough decision. Do you want to manually enter 6 months worth of data, or do you want to just have them kind of suck it up and wait and convert them at the end of the year? So I would probably have a conversation with the client about that, depending on what their budgets are. But really, with Peachtree, you're going to do opening balance journal entry with their trial balance as of whatever date, and then import all the lists. But we're going to talk about all that in a minute. So anyway, post-conversion, there's a whole bunch of good stuff that we have to do. Once you take your QuickBooks Desktop, whether it's Mac, Pro, Premier, or Enterprise, you want to make sure that the very first thing that you do is have QBO open and QuickBooks Desktop open at the same time, and you want to do run some reports so you can compare them. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to open a balance sheet, and you want to change the date, set the dates to all dates, and you want to change it to accrual-based. Regardless of whether they are cash or accrual, you want to make sure that the date for your balance sheet is all dates, accrual, and what this does is it looks at absolutely every transaction that's hitting the GL. And if your numbers match, your numbers should match QBO and QuickBooks Desktop, you're good to go. One thing where they won't match, and it's okay if they don't match, is if you're you're converting with inventory. Because you're going from average cost to FIFO in QBO, your cost of goods and your inventory assets will not match. And you'll be able to calculate, you'll be able to look and see, make sure that that is correct. So the other thing you want to do is your P&L. So your balance sheet and your P&L, all dates, accrual. And this is just to make sure, like the other day, I keyed in something, and instead of putting 2016, I keyed in 2106. So the date on that was wrong. And I hit save, and if I hadn't caught it and then I had converted, then it would still show up with all dates. That's why we do that. So you want to make sure that you compare those two reports, the QBO with desktop, to make sure the balances are all the same. You want to also take a look at any accounts receivable, accounts payable, any of your sales tax, payroll liabilities. Just make sure all of those are correct, right? Make sure they're all good. And then you want to make sure that you go through your gear icon and you go to the account and settings. I know some people, it still may show company settings. They just updated the gear icon menus in the last couple weeks, and I know it's not hitting every cluster or group. So some people, it may still say company settings. Some people, it may say account and settings. Anyway, you're going to want to review all of those settings and set any global preferences. So, you know, activate any features. Are they, you know, what are they going to be doing? You want to make sure if they're doing estimates and they're converting those estimates to invoice, that's a preference. That's a feature you're going to have to turn on in settings. Then you want to go and customize any of your sales forms as well. Connect any of your bank feeds. You're not going to connect your bank feeds to the gear icon. You're going to connect your bank feeds through that left-hand nav bar, that left nav bar, the navy blue bar on the left-hand side. And you'll go connect any of your bank or credit card accounts. And then you want to make sure that you do an initial reconciliation of any previously reconciled transactions, any previously inactive lists. So what happens is if you haven't cleaned up your QuickBooks desktop, and this is why sometimes it's a good idea to do a condense anyway, because it will remove any unused or inactive list items, any old customers, vendors, products, anything. So doing a condense might not be such a bad idea, even if they are under 350,000 targets. So what you need to do, though, is you still need to go through all of your lists, your chart of accounts, your customer, your vendor, and mark any of the previous, if they were inactive in QuickBooks Desktop. What happens during conversion is they get made active again. And it's kind of a pain in the butt, I understand, but there's nothing that we can do about it except try and maybe do that condense before you move it. So you'll just have to go make any of those list records inactive again. And then if you have any recurring transactions that you would like to use, you can set those to, sales receipts. You want to, after you connect your bank feeds, you want to make sure you go in and maybe set up any of your bank feed rules. So, I have a bank feed rule that says anytime it sees Delta in the memo, it automatically posts it and it hits Delta as the vendor and my travel. So with bank feed rules, you can now set up bank feed rules so that they automatically add them. QuickBooks Online automatically adds it. And so when it comes to like Delta or Uber, for me, that's always travel. And so I have rules set up for my old Kildall services. Anytime it sees Delta or Uber, I don't even have to match or add it or even accept the rule. The rule just does it for me. Create any budgets that you want to do, any saved custom reports, create any, customize any of your reports and memorize them if you need to. And then the last step, this is the last step in the process, I make sure I get the QuickBooks, all of the global settings set the way that my clients want them, and then I start inviting users. So that's when I start saying, okay, dear client, you please come and enjoy your QBO, your wonderful QBO that we've set up for you. So converting lists only, and this is really what I would be doing if I had someone who was coming from a non-QuickBooks product. So if they were coming from Sage or maybe Peachtree, or if their QuickBooks file was so jacked up, we just wanted to start from scratch, right? It's just a clean, fresh start. I know when Bryce Forney is a CPA out in California that's on our training team, when he does conversions, he never converts desktop files. He always takes the trial balance and enters that in and then does lists. So it's always a fresh start. I don't do that because I like to give my client, and it's a personal preference. It's totally up to you and the client. I don't like to do that because that requires my client to keep the QuickBooks desktop if they want to go back and look at historical information. So I try and clean up all of the data that I can, like clean up the QuickBooks desktop file as much as I can, and then do the conversion to QBO so they have all of that historical information. I mean, it's really, I don't do it very often, but at least a couple times a year, I'm able to go back and look at my Kildall services going back to 2003. So that's the greatest thing about QBO is there's no list limits. I can go back and look at, my P&L and do a year-over-year comparison for the last 13 years, and it's actually pretty cool to be able to do it. So if you're converting desktop and you're doing lists only, you're going to want to export those lists from desktop, and you can do this as well from a non-QuickBooks product. The instructions are just going to be different, but it's the same basic concept, right? So you're going to export all of your lists. If you go to your File menu and Export List, you'll choose which list you need. Obviously, you probably are not going to need to export a price level list because QBO doesn't have price levels. But you'll export those lists from QuickBooks Desktop to an IIS. And then what you're going to do is you're going to open up that IIS file in Excel. And the way to do this is to open up Excel first, and then go File, and then go to the folder that you saved that IIS. And instead of choosing all Excel files, you want to look at all files. So there's a little drop down when you're looking for a file when you're opening up Excel, and you can open up that IIS file, and you can then save it, do a save as, and save it as the Excel, right? Or you can save it as a CSV. Doesn't really matter. You just want to save it as some sort of spreadsheet. So then if we're going to import just those lists only, right, we need to import all of that good stuff into QuickBooks Online. We're going to go to the gear icon, and then from that gear icon, we're going to choose Import Data. So there's 4 types of lists that we can import. We can import a chart of accounts. We can import our products and services or items. We use those pretty much interchangeably. We can import our customers and our vendors. And quite frankly, I very rarely import customer and vendor lists. What I usually tell my clients, because if we're doing lists, a lot of times those lists are pretty messy, I tell them, let's get your chart of accounts in, and let's get your items in, and then you can enter your customers and vendors as you're working with them. So I tell them it's not such a priority to get those customers and vendors in. So you're going to choose the list type. There's always a sample file for you to download so that you can see exactly how the data should be formatted. I highly recommend downloading that sample and checking that out so you can have your data formatted, because you're going to select that file to upload, and then on the next screen it's going to ask you to map those accounts. When you use that sample file, it just finds the fields, and there really is no mapping. It's magic. It's very, as Bryce would say, auto-magical. So again, just choose the list type, download the sample or the template so you can see how it needs to be formatted, and then just follow the online instructions. What's really cool, and because I don't really have the opportunity to do too much demo today, what's really neat is when it pulls, after you do the mapping, the next screen, it shows you all the data that it's bringing in, and you can actually edit it if you need to. So like maybe some of it's in all caps and some of it's, in all lowercase, which drives me crazy. I have to have it all very case congruent, I guess, or consistent. You can go in and edit it on that screen and then click next and it'll import it in. So I really like doing that. Then you're going to enter in your beginning balances. So You're going to take your trial balance from your prior period. So maybe you're converting from a stage in the middle of the year. So you would want to, I would probably do it July 1st. So you'd take your trial balance from June 30th, and you would, any open balances. So you're going to use the trial balance, and you're going to enter a journal entry to enter all of your opening balances in, or all of your balances, right? So you'll to enter beginning balances, let me start over. All right. Let me start over. First, you want to get your trial balance, right? Because you're going to need to determine the start date of your new QBO company. And then you get the trial balance from that prior period. Then you want to make sure that you get a list of all of your outstanding transactions. So any deposits in transit, any outstanding uncleared checks, any open AR, any open AP, sales tax, payroll, any of those liabilities that are payable. And then you also want to gather any of your inventory detail, quantity on hand, sales price, taxable status, and cost. And you also, another thing is if there are any unbilled time and charges, you also want to assemble a list of time and charges that are going to be billable to customers that have not been billed yet and are not included in the list of things above, right? So they just haven't been, they're not AR or AP. So if the prior period was a year-end, be sure that before you use the trial balance, that any adjusting entries were recorded in the old accounting system so that they match the tax return, less any non-book adjustments before using the year-end trial balance to record those new beginning balances. If the conversion is mid-year, then you can enter month-end balances for income and expense in order to run comparative trend reports if you want to. Or you could just do, the whole thing so that you don't have that month-to-month comparison if you can't get it for some reason. So the overview of the procedure is you're going to basically enter, you're going to post a series of transactions with offsetting amounts to opening balance equity account. Opening balance, or OBE, is an account that really acts as a clearing account, and a lot of people don't understand opening balance equity. Opening balance equity is a clearing account, and if the QuickBooks has been set up properly, it's always going to have a zero balance. So you're going to want to use a journal entry to enter all of the balance sheet balances. For bank accounts, you want to enter the ending bank balances of the prior period. You want to post prior year retained earnings and prior year net income to retained earnings. Exclude accounts receivable, exclude accounts payable, exclude inventory, exclude sales tax payable, and exclude payroll liabilities as well, as those are going to be entered later. Use the opening balance equity as the offset account. So you want to, the balance, the net total of AR, AP, inventory asset, sales tax payable, and any payroll liabilities, that balance is going to get posted to opening balance equity. Then you're going to enter any outstanding checks and deposits as of the original dates and amounts using the proper check or deposit transaction type. You want to select the proper bank account for the outstanding transaction and post those transactions to opening balance equity account since you've already recorded income and expense for the prior year to retained earnings account in the previous step. These transactions are going to net with the bank balance you entered in step number 1's journal entry to arrive at the prior period's ending books, / register balance. You're going to enter open AR transactions with the original dates using an invoice transaction. If it's an accrual basis, you want to make sure that you add an item to the products and services list called beginning balance or, opening balance, something like that. And you want that item to post to opening balance equity. This is also going to offset any duplicate sales that you're now recording against the retained earnings you posted to OBE in step number 1. If cash basis, create the original transaction using the regular list of products and services that post to the income account so that once payment is received, income will be recorded appropriately. Then you want to enter any open accounts payable transactions, again, with the original dates and the amounts using a bill transaction. If accrual basis, post the bill to OBE to offset any duplicate purchases that you're now recording against the retained earnings that you posted to opening balance equity in step 1, right, and that with that journal entry. If cash basis, again, just recreate the original transaction using the items or accounts so that once the payment is made, the expenditure will be reported correctly. You want to enter any details for any non-posting transactions, such as any open estimates or purchase orders. Just go ahead and enter any non-posting, unbilled time activity using single or weekly timesheets. The time entries don't post to the general ledger, but they will be available so that you can pull, or your clients can pull them onto customer invoices later. Use the original dates of those transactions when the work was performed and the original hours and mark them as billable. And we're almost done, I promise. Next, you'll enter non-posting, unbilled charges using a delayed charge screen. Just like the time entry activities, these charges will not post to the general ledger, but will be available for mid-year income and expenses, if applicable. Even if you're entering beginning balances for the end of a year, a business may still want to be able to run historical comparative reports by month. You can use a journal entry dated for each month to record the total of that month's P&L account activity with offsetting amounts to retained earnings so that you don't duplicate the income and expense that you already posted to retained earnings in that first step, which is that journal entry. I keep saying step 1, but that step 1 is that journal entry. Then you'll do any adjustments to sales tax and payroll tax payable. You'll set up all your products and services, establish your inventory balances by adding products. Then you want to, when you're all done with it, verify that that opening balance equity account is at 0. If it is not 0, you want to explore the balance sheet to confirm that all other beginning account balances are proper and determine which component in OBE is not washing properly. It may be that you just need to adjust duplicate retained earnings or reclass some other equity accounts. So I know that was a lot, so I apologize for that. But we're done with that now, right? And so we're going to talk in a minute, in just a second, about converting from non-QuickBooks products. The process is going to be quite similar. But before we do that, I'm going to give you your next CPE keyword, and that is Whiplash. So the second CPE keyword is Whiplash. And while you guys are looking at the screen, here's another question. I hate to ask. Don't hate. It's good. Shannon is asking, if your client has MYOB, can this be converted or imported, or even from Excel maybe? So if it's coming from MYOB, you used to be able to convert this to QuickBooks for Mac, but quite frankly, I don't think I've done a conversion since like 2007. If it's anything that's not a QuickBooks product, a QuickBooks desktop product, I basically take their trial balance. I figure out what my starting date in QBO is going to be, and then I get a trial balance, make sure that I usually ask the tax preparer for the trial balance if it's year end. But I get a trial balance and I do exactly what we just talked about if it's a non-QuickBooks product, desktop product, and then I import any of the list information and do that journal entry, that big long journal entry, that process that I just got done talking about. Will QuickBooks Pro accept Quicken 2014 data as a conversion to QuickBooks to QBO later? You know what? I don't know, but I would think that it would. You can email me, Stacey, S-T-A-C-Y, at S-T-A-C-Y-K, so it's Stacey at stacyk.net. You ask me that and I will find out for surely. Let's see. All right. Any issues converting from Premier with customers' jobs? No, because they come in to QuickBooks Online as sub-customers. So QuickBooks Online doesn't call them jobs. They're called sub-customers, but you still have that same hierarchy. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to go back, right back, Whiplash. Okay, so everybody got that? So if we're converting from non-QuickBooks products, there are some considerations that you should think about. How many years of data do you want to have in there? Usually we just do a starting date, but if they want lots of years of data, that's something to think about. And can those transactions be exported to a spreadsheet? And can all of their lists be exported as well? I mean, I've seen some ridiculous accounting software where they couldn't even export a chart of accounts. So it all had to be entered in manually, which was just ridiculous. So you have to really think about what that, what that software is that they're converting from, and what you can get out of it is kind of the big thing. If the transactions can be exported to a spreadsheet, that's like magical, and I love that. I'm not going to lie. But odds are it's very difficult to get anything other than reports to export from most software. I'll just put that out there. It's kind of a bummer. But once you kind of determine what you're going to do, if you can get those transactions exported to, any kind of spreadsheet format, Excel, CSV, whatever it is, then we have some really super amazing tools that we can use to import those transactions. If you go to apps.com, there's quite a few more of them than there have been in the past. For a long time, we had Transaction Pro Importer, and I really like Transaction Pro Importer. That's still my favorite one. I would say my second favorite one is probably Business Importer. I have not tried Guru Importer or IIS Importer. We should do an apps webinar just on these and show how they work. So those are the 4 options that you can use to get transactions, because like I showed you, or we talked about before, you can't import anything other than lists using QBO by itself. You need a third-party software. And again, I'm partial to Transaction Pro Importer. But that's just me. You may love the Guru Importer, and that's all good. Same but different, right? Everybody has their own way of doing things. Start at the same point, end at the same point. How you get there, it's your journey, right? Okay. So these are our options that we have, Business Importer, Guru Importer, and there might be, since we wrote this, who knows, there might be even more importing tools that have come online, since we wrote this. So just keep that in mind. Using Transaction Pro Importer, it's very, very simple to do. You go to apps.com, you just search for Transaction Pro Importer, click the little blue button that says Get App. You'll use your Intuit ID to sign on, if it even asks. But if you're already logged into QBO, it's going to recognize, because your apps.com is already an Intuit website, an Intuit-owned property. So it should just recognize that you're already logged in. And then you can sign in with your choose the QBO account. So so this is one where we're always told not to add apps as the accountant user. I think this is probably the best exception to the rule, because unless your client is going to be using this to pull PayPal transactions in or some other type of transaction in from another third-party software, you're going to use your subscription, and you can sign up for the subscription and then, pay for the month and get the full features and do your conversion, and then you can cancel it and sign back up again. So that's what we do, because we don't always use we don't have Transaction Pro Importer just kind of on basically retainer. We just sign up for it and pay for it as we need it when we're doing those conversions. So you'll choose the QBO account. If they have sales orders, one of the things that you can do with those sales orders is you can import them as estimates if you need to. It may muddy the water if they have estimates as well. So usually if they have sales orders, I don't import them. if they're using estimates. If they're not using estimates, then I will import them as the sales orders as estimates. And you always want to make sure that you import any lists first. And you don't need you don't need TPI Transaction Pro Importer to do that. You can just use QuickBooks. Just go to the gear icon, import data, and do all that good stuff. And then this is what's really, really, really important. When you are importing these transactions, and I want to say this very slowly, and I may repeat it, when you are importing transactions using Transaction Pro Importer or whatever importing tool you choose to, make sure that you follow the workflow. So you want to do estimates, and then invoices, then receive payments, and then deposits. You want to make sure that you always pull in the order of the workflow. So you would do purchase order, vendor bill, bill payment, right? Good? Okay. And then it's just going to walk you through the import steps and all of the mapping. And most of these accounts are the same, like most of the import tools are the same way. So I think I only have about 7 minutes, and I want to do questions. So here are our learning objectives. I'm required to show these to you for NASBA requirements, so you get your CPE. And then while this next screen is on, here's questions. We'll take questions. I want to thank you for attending, and so let's do some questions here. I know I got a couple of them. Are these steps listed somewhere? Barbara, which steps? If you guys need any of the if you guys are interested in anything that I said, just send me an email, Stacey at Stacey K, and I can try to answer. I'll send that, like the steps for like the journal entry and all the AR and AP, because I know that's a lot of stuff to kind of like think about, and it's not, it's too much stuff to put on a slide because it gets ridiculous. It's like looking at a wall of text. So if you need that, let me know. I would have loved to have shown you, but the bandwidth, I was told, the way that this presentation works, I would have loved to have done all demo. But the way that this platform works is demo only really works for short periods of time. And so this is kind of a presentation where it's either all slides or all demo. And I wanted you guys to have the best experience that we could possibly give you, and that means slides. So just FYI. We have 5 minutes left. Are there, let's see. Can you deal with converting payroll from Sage 50 to an existing QBO file? That's going to be like any kind of conversion to payroll. I mean, it depends on what version of payroll, if you're using an Intuit payroll subscription, Karen. So I would have to have a little bit more detail. Let's see. Transaction Pro Importer, you connect it to one company at a time. So you would, basically, we just cancel it, and we connect it to the client that we need to. And then when we're done with that conversion, we disconnect it. If a client needs it to use on a regular, ongoing basis, I have the client sign up. I don't connect it as an account user. So my email is Stacey at stacyk.net. If you could, just go to stacyk.net, S-T-A-C-Y, stacyk.net, or Google me, Stacey Kildall, and you can find me. I'm very easy to find online. And I think that's it. I want to thank you guys again for spending the day, your afternoon with me. I really appreciate it. And I think you guys have a survey, right, Michael? For their CPE survey? That's after? After, yep. So we're good. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you, all 367 of you that were in here that I see. There were more, I think. And you guys have a good evening.